Welcome to another edition of the Let's Be Frank show. If you've been following the show, you know at the beginning of the year we usually do some interviews with the people in town as to what's going on in the different areas of our town. We had the mayor on. We didn't have the mayor. We had the town manager on. We had the state representative on, Vincent Candelora. And today, my guest is Superintendent of Schools, Scott Schoonmaker. Scott, welcome.
Thank you, Frank.
Scott's not new to this show. He usually comes on every year at this time to give views on what's going on in the school system. And sometimes he comes on in the middle of the year just to give us a preview. And he usually comes on to talk about the budget, one of the fun things for everyone in our town. But right now, there's always changes going on in the school system. There's Core 7, Core 8, Center Cores, and
Common Core.
Common. That's the one. Common Cores. And why don't you talk a little bit about what's going on with the big thing now?
The big thing now. This has been probably one of the most challenging times in public education because of the sweeping changes that have been happening, and it's been at the federal and state level, and as superintendents and administrators in the state of Connecticut, we've been charged with following and complying with all of the changes that have happened over the last several years, Common Core being the largest one, where we are now really asking our students to do more earlier on in their academic careers through a very rigorous curriculum. High expectations and standards that are measured each year as they progress from kindergarten through high school. We're assessing differently than we have in the past, with more frequency, and asking our students to be ready for college and career upon exiting our school systems. So we're tying it to teacher evaluation. Those who are in the classroom, we're now using student data to evaluate their successes or shortcomings. And it's been interesting, very interesting to say the least.
So does that mean the kids are taking more tests than they used to get to this?
We're testing them throughout the school year in preparation for the Smarter Balance assessment at the end of the year in the spring. So overall, we're doing more preparation for this testing period. Now, the state has started to back down a little bit with the expectations in English language arts, and we just received word a few weeks ago that there was going to be less amount of time dedicated to the testing period. So we were thankful for that, but there's still a great deal of class time in preparation to get students ready for this assessment.
Now, is there any different, why is that different than, say, 5 years ago or 4 years ago?
We used to have the CMT, and students would progress towards that mastery test, and it was really more classroom preparation and it tied to our curriculum. Now we're looking at skill sets, and we're giving the flexibility of creating and working within our local boards of education to come up with a curriculum that exposes those students to be able to master those skills. So the state has given us guidelines and parameters to fall within, and it's a challenge for students. We always say that it's similar to taking fifth grade work and giving it to a third grader and getting the student ready in third grade for the rigor of a fifth grade assessment. So it's going to take time. This is not something that happens overnight. It takes a lot of teacher preparation, a lot of professional development, and a lot of buy-in, because you know there's been a great deal of pushback at many different levels.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know there's different tests and everything, and I know I was watching the council meetings, and a lot of people who watch this show are TotoketTV fans, so they watch everything that they watch this station. And one of the things was one of our council members, I guess they were harping on one test where our scores weren't that great, and that was all over the place. It wasn't just on TotoketTV. And what wasn't all over the place was you pointing out that that's one series of tests, and the other test we did very well in, but that wasn't the big thing on the show.
No, unfortunately, and like anything else, many aren't aware of what goes into and what that entailed with this first-time test. It was a snapshot of the progress that our students have been making, specifically at the middle school, the intermediate school. And there were scores there for the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade that we were concerned about. These are the same students who did very well on the CMT score. As a matter of fact, 2 of those classes scored in the top 10 percentile in the state of Connecticut in mathematics. We know these kids have the aptitude and the ability to succeed. We have to focus more on preparing the students for what's going to be on the test. We've started doing that, and then getting the test takers serious. I usually assimilate it's going into a game. If you don't go into the game focused with clarity and a game plan, you're not going to succeed. And we're in the process now of making sure that when we assess again in April and May, our students have that focus, clarity, and that motivation to succeed.
I know when I used to take this test, I used to just see how many A's I can answer, how many B's I can answer. And
the stakes are a little higher now. Times have changed, and we're continuing to measure the growth throughout the school year. So our students have that ability now with technology and changes in the classroom where students are assessing on the computer. They get instantaneous feedback. They know where they're at. They know their weaknesses and their areas to strategize on to improve those scores. So
now, how does this affect the entire district? Say, now testing is different. There's more testing. There's this, and I'm sure it's going to come up as you're working on your budget. How does this affect the entire district as far as teachers? Do we have to put in more teachers to run? Is there more training involved?
Sure. That's a great question. Some of the changes that we've seen around the state of Connecticut over the past several years is there's more defined teacher roles for coaching, the coaching model. So a certified teacher may assume the role as a reading teacher or a reading coach or a math coach. And we've been fortunate in North Branford to acquire those 2 positions over this past year. So in the lower elementary grades, we do have 2 individuals who specifically work in those 2 areas and work with teachers. We're looking to phase the language arts coach into the middle school and eventually a math coach into the middle school to then pick up the continuum of grades 6 through 12. So it gets, it's kind of an interesting situation where you have declining enrollment, but you have to add personnel because of the changes and the expectations from the federal and state government.
So it does involve more, I mean, are we doing it as teachers retire, as teachers?
We have used the opportunity, if we do have attrition in our teaching force through retirement, to not hire and try to be creative in having current certified teachers working in multiple roles to save monies. As you know, you've lived in this town for quite some time. It's never an easy process in the budget season, and over the last several years, obviously the economy has dictated the outcomes of our requests in the budget process, and we're hoping this year that we will gain some support for some of the initiatives that we have in the budget.
Now we're talking about the entire district. Maybe you can highlight maybe what's going on maybe in each of the levels, maybe Jerome and then TVS and middle school and high school. Sure. As far as what
I think that the one overarching goal that we've had in the district is the implementation of PBIS, and that's the positive behavior interventions. And we've worked hard at creating a culture and climate in each building that is built on respect and compassion towards others. And I think we've really seen the fruits over the last several years in that we track data on all of our discipline referrals, and they have significantly decreased over the past several years. And not only are the administrators, but the teachers, all staff members are really playing that role of making sure that they're modeling those behaviors that we want our students to model. And so I think we've done a great job. Jerome Harrison was recently recognized by the state of Connecticut for their climate, through a climate survey through the state of Connecticut. They had a group come in and do a site visit and interview staff and students and parents. And we were thrilled to be recognized as a school of excellence for school climate. And that will push up to Totucket Valley, where they have their theme. The middle school has a theme, and the high school, where we're consistently trying to catch kids in the act of doing the right thing.
It's funny because I've been coaching at the high school for probably about 10 years, and I coached at the middle school. And it was always with the kids, and it was understood that, you know, they're making fun of this one, and it's like a team thing, you know,
Sure.
he can't, and it does seem to the last 3 or 4 years, it seems to, it's not like a constant, oh, cut that out, or, you know,
Right.
the kids are, I mean, I only see them a couple of months a year on the field, but they're not doing that as much as they
Sure.
did 8 or 9 years ago, you know, with...
No, it is a shift, and you look at now the bullying laws and the amount of energy and time that's spent on these initiatives that are mandated through the state. Kids are made aware at a very early age about appropriate behaviors and behaviors that can draw penalties, you know, to you in the school system. And we've seen that. We've noticed a huge decline, and we've done a lot of work with the Anti-Defamation League and bringing in groups to meet with the middle and high school students to have them have a better understanding and more compassion towards their classmates. And I think we've seen the payoffs with the behaviors that you're talking about at the high school level.
Yeah, I mean, baseball used to be, you know, everything on the field was fair game, so to
Sure.
speak, and even with the other teams. But, you know, North Branford takes pride in making sure that the kids behave. I mean, I won't tell the, well, I do tell the kids this. We'd rather lose a game and have a coach come up to us at the end of the game and say, hey, your kids were, or an umpire, say your kids were well behaved, your kids were class act. We love umpiring your kids because they're, and that doesn't just come from the coaches, because obviously we see them 2 months a year. I mean, we see them all the time, but we're with them 2 months a year. It's got to be coming from the teachers, and it's got to be coming from what the school is sending home to the parents.
Right.
And it's a whole circle that these kids are getting.
That is true, and we were recognized, the athletic department, for all sports by the CIAC for our conduct on and off the field by players and coaches, and we were awarded this past year, and the name escapes me right now for that award, but it's significant, and it was the first time that North Branford had received the award, and they were honored by the state for this, and I think that speaks volumes to the message that's out there and what other coaches are seeing when they do compete with us. We had a hockey game last evening versus East Haven, and we were successful in the game, and we had a strong student turnout and fan turnout, and the athletic director from East Haven made it a point to call our principal and athletic director this morning and compliment and say what great representation not only your team and your students but your fans had in that game. And that goes a long way. You don't hear that too often, and we certainly were proud of that phone call.
Yeah, that's a great thing. I mean, again, we walked out. I went to the hockey game, and this is probably airing before that, but we will be playing Friday the 19th.
This Friday that's a good question. Today's the
15th.
16th.
It'll be Friday the 18th. If you're watching this prior to that, we're playing for the state championship in Ingalls Rink at 7:30, so we'll put in a plug for that.
Sure.
But when I was leaving the game, I was remarking to the other coach I was with that 6-7 years ago, I went to I go to all of them, but at the end of the game with loss or in tight games, and there was, you know, we had to drag kids, you know, literally say to them, get on the bus right now, and kids were just walking out, shaking hands, you know, having a good time. They, you know, the girls were yelling out the car, yeah, we're
Sure.
number one
Typical,
and stuff,
yeah.
but it was typical high school stuff,
behaviors.
which you love to see.
Yeah.
Sort of in that line, I don't post Facebook, but I like to read it to see what's going on. And there was a letter that was sent to the middle school principal, and I guess he sent it out to the parents, and the parents had it all over Facebook. And I'm thinking that letter should be all over everything.
Sure, that was a middle school basketball game. A parent reached out to Alan Davis, our principal at North Branford Intermediate School, and shared a story of how during a basketball game, her child was placed in the game, and he was a special education student that had some disabilities, and our students made it possible for him to not only participate but score in the game and be a part of that game. And it meant so much, I know, to not only that family but to the school system and to all those that were present, that she felt the need to reach out and recognize what the North Branford players did for this young man, for her son. And it really was a feel-good story, and really, I think, an indication of what's happening and the lessons that our students are learning outside of the textbook or outside of any measurable means.
Yeah.
They're becoming good citizens and caring citizens, and that's what we really should be celebrating and getting out to the people.
It was funny because as I was reading the letter, it said we were losing at the time,
Right.
and we still allowed the other kid to score it. As a
Right.
coach, I was going, oh,
Which
no.
it made it even better.
And the coach who did it, I don't take credit for it, but I coached him in Little League.
Okay.
And I was reading it to my wife. I said, remember, because it was all over Facebook, the actual letter that the woman sent. And I said, this kid was on my Little League team, and he probably learned all the things that you're not supposed to do
your
when you
coaching.
coach from my coaching. And he said, Coach Mentone would have done this. I think I can't do that, and I have to be a nice guy. I'm looking at my question sheet, and I'm sort of I sort of asked them all. What else do we have going on? I'll just put you on the spot and let you talk for the rest of the show.
Well, there's been great change, and I think one of the constants that's remained is our charge of making sure that all students are challenged at every level with opportunities that we feel are preparing them for whatever they endeavor in life. And looking at enrollment trends throughout the state of Connecticut that continue to decline, we're still affording our students great opportunities in all areas. We've increased opportunities not only in athletics, in the classroom, but opportunities in the arts, and we're continuing. We're working with East Haven with a marching band, and we've had great success of getting our kids together and competing. And we've increased participation at Yale for students who want to challenge themselves and enroll in courses at the college level, and that's paid great dividends for us. So these unique things, I think, are indicative of being creative when times are tough and finding ways to champion a cause and work together to continue to get kids to want to be better and want to push themselves to achieve. So it's been a great process to be a part of, and when you go to a game like you mentioned before and see 70% of the student body there, graduates, families, friends, people from the community, I think it really speaks to North Branford. And when the chips are down, or when people or teams or organizations are in need, North Branford rallies, and they come out in force. And that's been, I think, for me personally, something that I've enjoyed.
Yeah, I love when I have Scott on the show, because most of the times when you're hearing about kids, you're always hearing about the stuff that they do wrong. And you're talking about the community and everything else. Another thing I saw on Facebook today, and I'm not sure you're aware of this, somebody on the hockey team put a GoFundMe. They're trying to get last year's captain. They need to raise $500 for last year's captain to be. I don't even know where he is.
He's in the Carolinas.
They're trying to get him home
right,
so that he can come to the game this year, because last year North Branford lost the state championship game, and he was part of it.
Right.
And
it was heartbreaking. Last year was one of those situations where we started the game with our beloved trainer Stacy catching a puck between the eyes and having to be rushed off. I think the emotion of that, coupled with some other things and playing a very good team, it wasn't in the cards. And this team felt that it was appropriate with one of their great leaders and teammates from last year, who was not going to be able to get back for this game, to set up a GoFundMe page with the players. And people got a hold of it, and at last check, they were over $700 to fly this young man up for the game on Friday. So again, I'm never surprised at what the people in North Branford will do when someone's in need and somebody needs to step up.
yeah, I thought that was. I said, this
great story.
poor kid couldn't. He lost last year, and here
Sure.
he is away at college, and that's going to be a good thing.
Sure.
Again, North Branford. I don't know what other towns do. I mean, I've lived in other towns, but they've never seemed to be like North Branford is. You know, you just see story after story about things
Sure.
where they're helping this one and they're helping that one. We had a dinner just last week for the Education Foundation, and one of the inductees had their son introduce them, and he was he's about 25 years old, and he's a North Branford product, and he's a nurse now. And you were at the dinner, obviously, and I mean, he had people in tears, just the class that he brought to the table when he gave the announcement, and he was a little bit funny. He was a little bit.
He was a great spokesperson and champion for North Branford education. He's a registered nurse, and you could tell his loyalty to the community and his appreciation for what it meant for his parents to be recognized for giving back. And he really did an amazing job. And there are stories, many, many stories, and we could go on and on about other graduates that are doing great things now. They've challenged themselves, they're in their careers, they're doctors, they're lawyers, they're in the investment world, they're teachers, they're back working with us. And you know, that's what it's about at the end of the day. You know, and we get caught up in trying to measure and look at a test score and attach that to if our schools are being successful. And I always caution people that it's one slice of the pie. And the other pieces of the pie that we talk about with mind, body, spirit, soul, and getting our students prepared to go out there and change the world. And it starts with compassion and being a good person. And those are the parts that I feel most proud about when I meet our graduates and see what they're doing.
Yeah, it's nice to be a part of the community, a community like that. Not to get off the greatness that the kids are doing, but I wouldn't be doing my homework if we didn't just get one budget question. How are we doing with?
It's been an interesting process. In 7 years, it's I think the first time that I came in with a flat increased budget, just the maintenance budget of trying to keep what we have moving forward to next year. And the Board of Education felt strongly that there were some initiatives that we had posted, but we didn't include. They wanted them in the budget. So that drove our number up over 4%. And they felt strongly about this budget. They were proud to present it. They were proud of the work that the administrators did in building this budget. So, you know, we're going in with an open mind. And we're going to have the Board of Ed present it on March 23rd at 7 o'clock at Town Hall, and then there'll be opportunities for the community to come out and speak in April. And we'll take it from there. You know, education is an expensive game. We know that. The costs are exorbitant. When you look at heating and cooling, you know, 4 buildings that are hundreds of thousands of square feet, and with special ed costs and transportation, and giving our kids every opportunity to compete against students from neighboring towns, there's a price to pay. And along those lines of the budget, there's a lot of talk right now with North Branford High School, and what are we going to do with that building? And I think it's important for people to realize that we are the only town within a radius of about 25 miles that has not touched their high school building. And that has to be the flagship. That has to be the shining star in your school district. Because when you start talking about students making other choices when they exit in the 8th grade, they're coming from a palace and they're walking less than 100 feet, and they're walking into a building that's over 50 years old and in dire need of updates and changes.
Yeah, the middle school was done, and that's your reference to the palace. And yeah, it's tough walking around at high school, especially when you see Guilford and Madison and
Morgan is being rebuilt now.
Morgan's being rebuilt, and it's all around us.
East Haven, North Haven have been done. Coggins been updated.
Yeah.
So we're standing out there, and it's time. We need to make the commitment. We need to get moving on that, because it takes several years for that process to play out, and we have to be the ones to get it started.
Yeah, because you hear, I mean, every year, I don't know that we lose more people to other schools than other towns do. You always hear about the 4 or 5 that
Right.
Went to one of the private schools or something. But I think
I think in my 7 years, we've brought it to the attention of the public. We've tracked students, we've counted numbers, and we sent out questionnaires. We wanted to hear from parents honest feedback as to why their kids were leaving. And we've tried to address many of those concerns. I think we've increased programmatically to provide, and we've increased our advanced placement courses. We have an engineering program. We have a hands-on tech department with automotive and a greenhouse. And, so we've countered a lot of the things that we were hearing. But students, I think of this 8th grade class, we have 14 students committed to Vinyl Tech. And we cannot compete with Vinyl Tech with their offerings. And that's just the reality of it. Our numbers at other private schools that are going to be attending private schools are down significantly. And we've had a number of students come back from private schools. I think the current 9 through 12 cluster at the high school, 7 students have returned from one of the private schools when they left in 8th grade. So we're getting those students back. And they're participating and they're feeling a part of this community, and it's great to see.
Well, that's the thing. My kids never wanted to even discuss it because, again, the community. And if you're going to, I went to a private school in high school. I went to Notre Dame. I don't make any secrets, but I lived in New Haven. It was a different situation at the time. I wasn't a fighter, so it was either go to Notre Dame or get beat up on a daily basis. And this face was bad enough, so I said, let's go to Notre Dame. But you miss the community because you're going away, and you can't really. You go to class in the other schools, but it's very difficult when you're going to another school 20, 25 miles away for parents to pick kids up, and they miss some of the extracurriculars and everything else that.
And let's face it, I can't match that faith-based choice to go to a private school. And I'm limited with my resources to try to match a technical school. I can't do that, And a lot of times parents make those decisions for different reasons, the athletic program, and then they find out that they're not going to participate, and they return, or other reasons. So, it's a very private decision that people make, and we've seen a number of those students come back.
Yeah. Oh. All right. So that's about it for tonight. We hope that we've brought you some information. You can always check online with the Board of Ed if you have questions. Scott's office is always open, and we hope that you've gotten something out of this show tonight. And thank you for
my pleasure,
being
Frank.
here.
Thank you.
And I should warn the people that now that baseball has started, this show will probably be running for about 4 months because I could usually never squeeze a show in during the baseball season. But hopefully you got something out of it. And I thank you again.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank our director, Mike Cummings. And until next time, have fun, be safe, and enjoy our community.